When I found strange men installing Wi-Fi equipment on my roof, I was furious. The HOA didn't ask permission and used my internet connection for free. But instead of just complaining, I hatched a brilliant plan. I'd make them pay for every byte they used. Before watching full video, comment below from where you watching, also like and subscribe for more stories. I was washing dishes when I heard the ladder scrape against my house. The metal on stucco sound made me wince. I dried my hands and walked to the window. 2 men in blue work shirts were climbing onto my roof. "Hey!" I shouted, throwing open the window. "What are you doing up there?" The younger man glanced down. "HOA work. Don't worry about it." "Don't worry about it?" This was my house they were climbing on. I rushed outside, still wearing my kitchen apron. "Get down from there right now," I demanded. Nobody told me about any work being done today. The older man, who had a tool belt and a company logo on his shirt that read "Connect All Networks," sighed like I was being difficult. "Sir, we have permission from Sunnyside Estates HOA to install these Wi-Fi repeaters. It's in your contract." I crossed my arms. "Show me where in my contract it says you can just show up without notice and put equipment on my roof." The men exchanged looks. The younger one climbed down while the older one continued working. "Look, Mr. Reynolds. Tom Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds, we're just doing our job. The HOA hired us to improve Wi-Fi coverage in the neighborhood. Your house is in a perfect spot to boost the signal for the community pool and clubhouse." I felt my blood pressure rising. "So you're putting internet equipment on my private property without my consent?" The HOA board voted on this last month. There was a notice in the newsletter. I vaguely remembered something about infrastructure improvements in the monthly newsletter that I usually toss straight into recycling. But nowhere did it say they'd be installing hardware on my house. "I want to talk to whoever's in charge," I said. That would be Barbara Winters, the HOA president. Barbara. Of course it was Barbara. The same woman who had fined me $150 last summer when my grass grew a half-inch too tall during my week-long vacation. By the time I got Barbara on the phone, the workers had already mounted a small white box on my roof. "Tom, this benefits everyone in the community," Barbara said in that condescending tone she reserved for people who questioned her authority. "The equipment uses very little electricity, barely enough to register on your bill." "That's not the point, Barbara. You can't just..." "Actually, we can." Section 18, paragraph C of the HOA agreement clearly states that the association reserves the right to install and maintain equipment necessary for community services on any property within the development. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a Pilates class. She hung up before I could respond. I walked back outside. The men were packing up their tools. "Is it done?" I asked. The older man nodded. "Yep. It's connected to the neighborhood network. You won't even notice it's there." But I did notice. In fact, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, I sat in my home office staring at my internet router, an idea slowly forming in my mind. If they wanted to use my house as their internet hub, maybe they should pay for the privilege. The next morning, I called in sick to work. This situation needed my full attention. First, I needed to understand exactly what they had installed on my roof. I dragged my ladder from the garage and climbed up to inspect the device. It was a white plastic box about the size of a shoebox with "Connect All Networks" printed on the side. There were 2 small antennas and a cable that ran down the side of my house too. Where exactly? I followed the cable. It disappeared into a small hole they had drilled into my outer wall. Without permission. Into my house. Inside, I found where they had connected the cable, directly into my internet router. They were using my internet connection to provide Wi-Fi to the community areas. I sat down at my computer and logged into my router's admin page. Sure enough, there was a significant amount of data being used even though all my devices were turned off. I checked my latest internet bill. I was paying $89.99 a month for unlimited data. I called my internet provider. "Yes, Mr. Reynolds, according to our records, there's been a substantial increase in your data usage over the past month," the customer service rep said. "How substantial?" "You've used about 2.8 terabytes of data. That's about 7 times the average household usage." 7 times. The HOA wasn't just using a little of my bandwidth, they were hogging it. I thanked the rep and hung up. Then I called Connect All Networks and pretended to be a potential customer. "How much would it cost for a business-grade internet connection to support a community clubhouse and pool area?" I asked. "Our commercial package for that type of usage would run about $250 per month, sir," the sales rep told me. $250. And Barbara had the nerve to tell me it wouldn't affect my bill. I spent the rest of the day researching HOA bylaws and internet service provider policies. By evening I had a plan. A plan for sweet, perfectly legal revenge. My first stop was the home of Mike Chin, a lawyer who lived 3 doors down. We weren't close friends, but we'd chatted at neighborhood barbecues and I'd helped him jumpstart his car once. "Let me get this straight," Mike said after I explained the situation. "The HOA installed a Wi-Fi repeater on your roof without proper notice, and they're using your personal internet connection to provide service to the community areas?" "Exactly." He rubbed his chin. "And you've verified they're using your internet and not a separate connection?" I showed him the router logs and the cable connection. "Interesting," he said. "They're essentially stealing your services. Even with the HOA bylaws, they can't appropriate your private utilities without compensation or consent." "So I can remove it?" "Not necessarily. Those bylaws do give them certain rights. But," he smiled, "there's nothing that says you have to provide them with your premium internet service." That was all I needed to hear. The next day was Saturday. Perfect timing for phase 1 of my plan. I called my internet provider and downgraded my package to the most basic service they offered, 5 megabits per second, which was painfully slow by today's standards. I also switched from unlimited data to a plan with a strict 250 gigabytes monthly cap. Any usage beyond that would cost $10 per additional 50 gigabytes. Then I bought a new router that allowed me to set up a separate guest network with bandwidth limits. I configured it so my personal devices would use the main network at full speed, while the guest network, which included the HOA's repeater, would be limited to a crawling 1 megabit per second. Within hours my phone rang. It was Barbara. "Tom, we're having issues with the Wi-Fi at the clubhouse. People can't stream the fitness videos on the new smart TV we installed." I put on my most innocent voice. "Gosh, that's terrible, Barbara. Maybe call your internet provider?" "The technician from Connect All said the problem is coming from your house." "Did you change something?" "Well, I did switch to a more economical internet plan. Times are tough, you know. Had to cut back on luxuries." There was a long pause. "Tom, we need that connection to be fast and reliable. The community depends on it." "I completely understand. Unfortunately, this is all I can afford right now." Another pause. "Fine. The HOA will cover the cost difference for you to upgrade your service again. Will an additional $30 per month be sufficient?" I nearly laughed. "Actually, Barbara, after looking into what commercial internet services cost, and considering the amount of data you're using through my connection, I think $200 per month would be more appropriate." $200? That's ridiculous. "Is it?" I've done some research. A business-grade connection for the usage you're requiring would cost at least $250 monthly. I'm giving you a neighborhood discount." I could almost hear her blood pressure rising through the phone. "This is blackmail." "No, Barbara, this is a business arrangement. You're using my private resources without proper compensation. I'm simply requesting fair market value. Of course, you could always install your own dedicated line to the clubhouse. The installation for that would cost thousands, and Barbara knew it. "The board will need to discuss this," she finally said. "Of course. Take your time. But until then, I'm afraid the connection will remain economical." She hung up with a huff. 3 days later, I received an official notice for an emergency HOA board meeting. The main agenda item: discussion of community internet services. I dressed in my best button-down shirt and arrived early. The small meeting room at the clubhouse was already half full with curious neighbors. I recognized the usual attendees, retirees with nothing better to do and the neighborhood busybodies who lived for drama. Barbara sat at the center of the board table, her perfect gray bob and pearls making her look like she'd stepped out of a HOA president's monthly magazine cover, if such a thing existed. "Let's call this meeting to order," she announced precisely at 7 p.m. "We have a single agenda item tonight regarding our community internet services." She explained the situation in the most biased way possible, how the HOA had invested in improving community amenities, and how one resident was now holding hostage these improvements with unreasonable demands. When she finished, she looked directly at me. "Mr. Reynolds, would you like to explain yourself?" I stood up calmly. "I'd be happy to, Barbara. First, I'd like to ask how many people here were aware that the HOA installed internet equipment on my private property and connected it to my personal internet service." Confused looks spread across the room. Clearly, most residents had no idea. "The newsletter mentioned infrastructure improvements," someone called out. "Yes, but did it mention that those improvements involved using my private internet connection that I pay for?" Or drilling holes into my house without my specific consent. More uncomfortable shifting in seats. I continued, I've been subsidizing the clubhouse and pool internet usage for over a month. My research shows the amount of data being used would cost approximately $250 monthly for a commercial account. I've offered a discounted rate of $200, which I think is more than fair. Barbara interrupted, the HOA can't possibly budget $200 monthly for internet. We'd have to raise everyone's fees. An older gentleman in the back raised his hand. How much would the increase be per household? Barbara shuffled through some papers. With 120 homes in our community, it would amount to approximately $1.67 per month per household. A woman near me snorted. Are you serious? We're having an emergency meeting over less than $2 a month. It's the principle, Barbara insisted. We can't allow residents to dictate terms to the HOA. Another neighbor stood up. Actually, I think Tom has a point. If you're using his personal service, he deserves compensation. And frankly, I'd rather pay $2 more than lose the Wi-Fi at the pool. My grandkids use it when they visit. The mood in the room was shifting. I could see Barbara realizing she was losing control of the narrative. There's another option, I suggested. The HOA could install its own dedicated line to the clubhouse. Of course, that would involve installation costs. Which would be approximately $3,500, Barbara said stiffly. More murmurs around the room. So we're looking at either a one-time cost of $3,500 or a monthly increase of less than $2 per household, summarized Mike Chin, who was sitting in the corner taking notes. From a legal and financial standpoint, the monthly option seems more reasonable. The board took a vote. 5 minutes later, it was official. The HOA would pay me $200 monthly for using my internet connection, retroactive to the date of installation. As I walked home from the meeting, I couldn't help but smile. Not only had I won $200 a month, but I'd also exposed Barbara's high-handed management style to the entire neighborhood. The next day, I upgraded my internet service to a business account with unlimited data and blazing fast speeds. I set up a dedicated network for the HOA connection with proper bandwidth allocation. After all, I was a businessman now. I needed to provide good service for my client. A week later, I received an official notice from the HOA, along with a check for $350. The retroactive payment for the time they'd been using my connection without compensation. But the real victory came 2 months later, when the annual HOA board elections were held. Barbara, who had run unopposed for the past 5 years, faced competition from 3 other candidates, all of whom promised transparent communication and respect for homeowners' rights. She lost by a landslide. The new HOA president, Marion Johnston, a retired school principal with a no-nonsense attitude, visited me personally to review the internet arrangement. I think what Barbara did was wrong, she told me over coffee at my kitchen table. But I have to admit, your solution has worked out well for everyone. The clubhouse has reliable Wi-Fi, you're being fairly compensated, and it's cheaper than installing a new line. I'm glad we could work it out, I said. There is one thing though, Marion added with a twinkle in her eye. We're planning to expand the Wi-Fi coverage to the playground area. Would you be interested in hosting another repeater? With proper compensation and advance notice, of course. I laughed. I'd be happy to discuss it. By the end of the year, I had become the neighborhood's unofficial internet provider, with repeaters on my roof serving the clubhouse, pool, playground, and community garden. My monthly check from the HOA had grown to $300. Barbara moved out 6 months later. Rumor had it she found another community with higher standards. But before she left, I made sure to send her a thank you card. Dear Barbara, thank you for the business opportunity. I couldn't have done it without you. Enjoy your new home, and don't forget to read the fine print in your HOA agreement. Best wishes, Tom. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just sweet, it's profitable.